Andrew Swan, editor of Flip Learning Today, and I just recorded the interview that you're about to see with science teacher Alex Nixon. He teaches at an international school in Bahrain. Bahrain is a bunch of islands off the coast of Saudi Arabia, so I'm here in Massachusetts. He's 8 hours away from me, and well, I just want to let you know that the video is a little bit glitchy. I'll do my best to splice things together and improve the quality as much as I can. But he's got some great things to say, and I was thrilled to be able to meet Alex at last after communicating with him on Twitter for a while, and I can't wait for you to meet him as well. So here we go. We know you on Twitter as the Science Sauce, and you've been putting out quite a few videos, and we'll be talking about some of those. But can you just first tell us a little bit about what got you into flipping and just sort of just your general what you do when you're not talking with the Flip Learning Network?
So the very, very, very first time I ever did Flip Learning, I was actually doing my training year. I was working full time as a teacher, but it was my training year as a teacher. And before I ever started teaching, before I ever got into the classroom, I thought that teaching was, I have facts and there's a bunch of kids that don't have those facts and I'm going to give them those facts. And obviously as you get more into it, you realize that there is so much more to teaching than that. But what I did come to realize was, we've got a lot of facts to give over to these kids nonetheless, especially, in the sciences. And it started to worry me a little bit that just as I'm getting into this industry, we're sort of being superseded by Google with this fact giving thing. There's nothing I can tell these kids that they can't figure out from a quick internet search. And then I thought, well, really, we kind of got to try and take advantage of that. If it's so easy for me to give kids facts, and I know that what we really need to be doing is letting the kids kind of explore this stuff in more depth and apply these ideas and sort of synthesize their own opinions on it, then why don't I just give them those facts really quickly? And I thought maybe the best thing I can do is just give them a bunch of facts right at the start of the lesson, do it as a lecture that takes 5 minutes, and then kind of go on from there and then apply that stuff. And then I thought, well, let's go one step further. Let's not even do it in the lesson. Let's give them something to watch beforehand, and then we'll discuss it as soon as they get in. And the very first time I did it, I was teaching pollution. It was heavily fact-based. They had to learn a definition for pollution, a few examples of, I think, air pollution, water pollution, land pollution. I think it was a long time ago now. And I was really impressed with myself that I'd came up with this idea. And a little later, my wife, who's also a teacher, she said, have you ever heard of Flip Learning? And I was like, no. She said, oh, well, it sounds a lot like that thing you've been doing. I was like, oh, all right, so I haven't really invented this idea at all. But nonetheless, I had kind of naturally come to this idea of flipping the classroom. And it worked so well, it just kind of stuck from there, really. It just, to me, just seems like such a logical way to get the fact-giving sort of the basics right out the way so that the kids can get straight in and hit the ground running as soon as they're in class.
Did you flip everything after that pollution lesson, or did you do some traditional, and did you step into it a bit more gradually, or were you just all in after that first attempt?
Oh, it's definitely been a gradual process. I'm a firm believer that there is no one way to teach. That I think there is an advantage to giving information to students there and then. There is an advantage to giving the whole set of content right there and then when you're with the students. There is the advantage to that in the right circumstances. And so I don't imagine that I will ever be a teacher who will exclusively flip. I know there are lots of teachers that do, and it's been great success for them. But to me, it's sort of been a gradual process. I use it where I see that it's appropriate for which topic, and sometimes where I've got the time to put the resources together.
You want to just say a little bit about how you produce, maybe a little bit about the technology that you've used to make some of your videos, because there's some pretty high quality stuff you've put together. So how do you do that?
Thanks. Well, I've gone on a bit of a journey. With the very first one that I actually published, which wasn't the pollution video. A little while later, I think about a year later, I published one on YouTube, and it's got the worst audio quality, and it's a topic. When I look, I think I could have been concise and I could have done this in 5 minutes, but the video actually lasts more like 15 minutes. But I did a video on osmosis and diffusion, and I introduced it with the words, "This is a quick video about osmosis and diffusion," and it turns out to be a really long video. But what I did was I made the presentation on Keynote, Apple's presentation software, Apple Keynote. I made the presentation on that, narrated it, uploaded that to YouTube. Mm-hmm. And since then, I've sort of progressed with that using, better microphones, improving the audio quality. Eventually, I started dropping it into editing software and adding a little intro. By then, as it went on, I'd sort of developed the website. So I wanted to direct people to sciencesourceonline.com. So I put that sort of flashing on at the start and that sort of thing. And then over time, it was maybe earlier this year, maybe around March time, I decided, well, why not try, flipping the camera onto me rather than just the presentation. Use a little bit of footage of me. And then I thought, well, I did one where I had the camera on me, the laptop here, and I would refer to things on the PowerPoint as I'm looking at the camera, and I would cut between them. And it was pointed out that, it's okay, but the background's a little bit bland and you're aiming this at young kids. Could you do something a bit more interesting with it? And I thought, well, yeah, maybe if I got a green screen. So I tried that. And suddenly the doorways just opened after that. The very first video I did with a green screen, I was doing tricks like I would snap my fingers, and as I snapped my fingers, the background changed into something else. And I could suddenly be in a forest and all sorts of things, all things that were, relevant to what I was talking about. And suddenly the visual sort of quality of it was much better, and the present the information was improved. So now my standard setup is that I've got my own little DIY lighting rig, because you've got to have reasonably good lighting if you're going to green screen. Just little IKEA lights that are sort of hooked just the right place. I've got my Nikon camera aimed at me, green screen behind me. I've got a Zoom 8 audio capturing all the audio, sometimes with a little lav mic. And then in post-production, I then remove the green screen, and sometimes I just put a nice, simple, plain background behind me, or sometimes I might put other things that sort of contribute to what I'm talking about. And that's sort of the standard layout. The problem is that in the past, it might take me, say, an hour to make a good presentation and then 10 minutes to narrate it. Now it might take me, say, an hour to make this video, to film this video, and then, several days of editing to put it together. So it's a big time commitment. But at the end of the day, I think, this really is my hobby. This is something I like doing. A lot of teachers, we work, on a good week, we work 50-hour weeks. On a bad week, we work significantly more. And the idea of then coming home at the weekend and doing work when you've already put in those hours is asking quite a lot. Whereas to me, this is my hobby. So when I'm done working, to then sit and edit videos, that's me kind of, that's me tuning out. That's my downtime. So I'm quite happy to do it,
No, I think that's something that teachers have to consider is, how much is the video sort of a means to an end versus the means to, as you said, a sort of a hobby or something to do.
It's true, but Sorry, I'm just saying, like I said, my first video is probably the lowest quality one that I've done, and it's still right now, I think, got more views than any other video on my channel. And at the end of the day, people want good quality content, and good quality content doesn't necessarily mean things flashing around the screen. It doesn't necessarily mean pristine audio. It doesn't necessarily mean all the fancy animations. At the end of the day, you've got to present the information, and that bit of it, the story or the information, the context, all of that is significantly more important than how much time you put into the post-production process. I think some teachers are maybe hesitant about doing flipped learning because they look at some of the content that's out there and think, oh, wow, I don't know if I've got the time for that. I don't know if I've got the skills. I don't know if I've got the time to learn. And I would just say, don't ever let that worry you at all. As long as the information you are presenting is appropriate and well explained, I think everything else.
For talking with us, where can folks who've been watching this, where can we find you? You've mentioned a couple things in passing, but where can we find you and your stuff on the internet?
So you can find me on Twitter. I'm at science_source, and lots of my materials are available on tes.com and Teachers Pay Teachers. And my website is sciencesourceonline.com. I've got a lot of flipped learning biology lessons, and as well as a few other resources, a whole load of stuff that's available for free. So if anybody wants to sort of delve into flipped learning and maybe hasn't got around to making their own resources or just wants to give it a try, then they could use my materials.
And I'll put a plug in as well. I mean, your vlogs are not always science-based. So those of us who maybe the biology stuff goes over our heads, but you've got a lot to say also about assessment and and teachers connecting with teachers and so on. So great stuff. That's what caught my eye for sure. So
Yeah,
we got something
fantastic.
for everybody.
Yeah, I'm glad it's proven useful then.
Definitely. Well, thanks for talking to us, Alex, and we'll see you online somewhere, somehow, sometime, right?
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. It's been a really good chat.